Welcome to the presentation on why you should absolutely not use Linux. It's a serious guide for people who love to lose control. My name is Khavar Nehal and I represent Remote Support LLC and Applied Technology Research Center. Thank you for joining this very serious presentation about why you should definitely, absolutely, under no circumstances use Linux. If you're here, it's because you value important things like forced reboots at inconvenient times, mysterious telemetry that phones home without asking, and paying monthly subscriptions for features that used to come for free with your operating system. In this presentation, we will discuss with complete sincerity and a straight face why you must avoid Linux at all costs. We'll explore how staying away from free open source software is actually the smart, modern, forward-thinking choice. We'll ignore the fact that the entire internet runs on Linux. We'll also pretend that supercomputers don't exist. And we'll definitely not mention that your Android phone is just another Linux distribution. So sit back, relax, and prepare to be convinced that giving up control, privacy, and ownership of your computing experience is the only rational choice. This is going to be great, or at least that's what the marketing department wants you to think. So let's begin. Let's address the elephant in the room immediately. If you're holding an Android phone, and let's be honest, statistically most of you are, so congratulations. You're already a Linux user. You have been one this whole time. Every time you check your email, doom scroll through feeds, or accidentally take a photo of your own pocket, you're running on the Linux kernel. So if you're here to nod along with your already Linux lifestyle, you're in the wrong room. Go enjoy it. This talk is not for you. This is strictly for everyone else. The people who genuinely believe their laptops run on fairy dust, subscription models, and corporate goodwill. The folks who think paying for an operating system somehow makes it more stable, secure, or legitimate than something free. And before the enterprise side eyes kick in, yes, Linux support and training absolutely costs money. Serious organizations routinely spend more on Linux than on other platforms because they're not paying for a logo. They're paying for reliability, redundancy, and engineers who actually know how to keep systems alive when everything else catches fire. But that's a conversation for people who have already stopped treating their desktop like a sealed black box. So if you still think Linux is just a hacker's hobby, a terminal-only relic, or something that breaks if you look at it wrong, welcome. Please close this tab. Go enjoy your already Linux life. For the rest of you, let's stop pretending your current operating system is magic. Let's talk about what's actually under the hood. Let's talk about the devices in your life. Your smart TV that streams Netflix, it's running Linux. Your home router that provides the Wi-Fi, almost certainly Linux. Your car's navigation and entertainment system, very likely Linux. Your fitness tracker counting your steps, Linux. Even your smart thermostat that you barely know how to program, you guessed it, most probably Linux. Linux is everywhere. It's in your home, your car, your pocket, and probably your coffee maker if it's a smart one or smart enough to connect to Wi-Fi. The open source ecosystem has already won. It's running the infrastructure of modern life. So here's the thing. Avoiding Linux on your desktop computer won't save you. It won't protect you from open source software. It won't keep your digital life pure or proprietary. All it does is leave you manually power cycling a proprietary black box while the rest of the world updates over the air automatically. When your router crashes, you can't fix it. When your smart TV freezes, you unplug it and plug it back in. When your car's system glitches, you pray it resets itself. But if you use Linux on your desktop, you could actually understand what's happening, you could fix it, you could have control. But no, device compatibility is not a reason to avoid Linux. It's just proof that you're already living in a Linux world. You're just not allowed to touch it. Might as well take the wheel. Oh, but I need Outlook for my corporate email. Sure, and if you're running a moonshot project, literally, you absolutely need not Outlook. Let's be clear, when NASA, European Space Agency, or SpaceX build systems that cannot fail, they don't reach for a subscription email client that requires remote desktop support from Houston in mid-flight. They reach for Linux. The International Space Station uses Debian Linux. SpaceX Falcon 9 flight software, also Linux. 100% of the world's top 500 supercomputers, all Linux. Every single one. Since 2017, that's almost a decade ago. So over the last decade, every top 500 supercomputer has been Linux. The cloud powering enterprise-grade software as a service systems, overwhelmingly Linux. Meanwhile, on Artemis 2, which is a $4.1 billion mission to the moon, astronauts lost email because Microsoft Outlook froze on the Surface Pro. Mission Control had to remotely troubleshoot a mail client in space in the year 2026. So let's reframe the question. If you're building something where uptime isn't a key performance indicator, it's a survival metric, do you bet on A, one, an open source auditable community hardened kernel that powers every top supercomputer on Earth, or B, a closed telemetry heavy app that can't sync a calendar without a network handshake? Linux isn't just good enough for moonshots, it's the default. Because when failure isn't an option, you don't ship proprietary black boxes. You ship code you can inspect, fix, and trust. So if your moonshot project is getting through Tuesday's inbox, maybe start smaller. Migrate to Thunderbird, sync your CalDev, run Linux on your laptop, and the next time someone says, "But Outlook," you can smile and say, "Yeah, that's why NASA calls IT from orbit and why every top supercomputer on Earth already made the switch." Let's talk about the Space Force incident. You remember that one, right? When a routine cumulative update quietly bricked mission-critical workstations, when a driver push turned perfectly functional laptops into expensive hand warmers, when systems that were supposed to be tracking satellites and defending the nation suddenly decided to reboot themselves at the worst possible moment. Now, if you want to avoid that kind of surprise, you should absolutely not use Linux, because Linux lets you pin versions, it lets you stage updates, it lets you say no to automated reboots during critical work, it gives you control over when and how your system updates. Wait, that's control, not a limitation. Or maybe you just need a coffee break as an excuse to step away from your desk, and honestly, Windows is the ultimate productivity alibi. Patch Tuesdays, surprise reboots, the mystery slowdowns give you the perfect blameless cover to wander off, stare into the middle distance, and pretend you're just avoiding that spreadsheet. So yes, avoid Linux if you enjoy scheduled downtime and letting a subscription-based update scheduler dictate your workflow, because Linux lets you decide when to update, when to reboot, and when to actually take that coffee break, which admittedly is far less convenient as an excuse. Or don't. Your uptime, your call. But don't say we didn't warn you about when your workstation decides to reboot in the middle of an important presentation. Linux gives you the power to say when. Proprietary systems give you the privilege of being told when. Choose wisely, or don't. We're not your parent. Let's be completely honest for a second. If you're serious about running cracked Steam games, Linux simply isn't architecturally equipped for your workflow. Why? Because somewhere deep in the kernel there is a hard-coded if this license is not valid, then moral outrage, and then exit 1. Routine that actively scans your binaries for unauthorized memory patches, gets deeply offended, and politely shows them the door. Windows, by contrast, just shrugs, opens the registry like a tired bartender, and runs whatever you feed it without a single follow-up question. Truly the gold standard in OS neutrality. Now sure, some engineers will try to tell you it's just binary incompatibility, that Wine Proton wasn't stress tested against 14 different crack groups, custom DLL wrappers, that Linux doesn't detect piracy, it just chokes on the modified Steam_API 64 DLL because the translation layer expects standard Windows API calls, not whatever Empress welded together in Notepad at 3 o'clock in the morning. But let's not get bogged down in reality. Clearly, Tux has a built-in DRM sniffing algorithm. It's practically a feature. And yes, fine, I'll acknowledge the inconvenient footnote. Steam Proton somehow delivers lower overhead, tighter frame pacing, and Vulkan native rendering that routinely leaves Windows sweating on identical hardware when you actually purchase your games. But who needs better performance or stable driver stacks when you're trying to run a 2017 AAA repack that hasn't been patched since the previous Windows updates? Priorities, people. So no, it's not a legal reason to avoid Linux, it's absolutely a technical one. What good is an open, auditable, highly optimized gaming stack if it won't gracefully execute a cracked executable that modifies its own section headers and bypasses anti-debug checks? Exactly none. Stick to Windows. Your crack files deserve an operating system that won't judge them. It's not piracy, it's just OS-specific compatibility planning. But my workflow, I need Adobe, I need Microsoft Office, I need so-and-so software here. I hear this all the time. I've even heard of people asking for a specific version of MS Office, totally oblivious to the fact that if I upgrade, they shall lose all of their old Exchange data related again to Outlook. That means calendar, emails, contacts, and collaboration stuff. It will just delete it during the upgrade. People act like they literally cannot function without a specific proprietary software suite. Sure, stay on the rental treadmill, stay in the world where you license your tools month after month, year after year, forever. Stay in the ecosystem where you get feature logged, where perfectly good functions get removed and replaced with AI upsells that cost extra. Stay in the environment where the software phones home with your every click, your every document, your every creative decision, and it's according to the end user license agreement that you agreed to all of this data sharing for them. That's your choice. Or you could run native alternatives, you could use web versions, you could launch Windows apps via Wine or Proton with 90% compatibility. You could discover that most of what you need from proprietary software you can get from free and open source alternatives. You don't require a monthly subscription. Also, you can run a virtual machine with all of the operating systems that you need on the same Linux machine without having to have multiple machines. That's what a virtual machine allows. Wait, that's freedom, not a limitation. So no, proprietary login is not a reason to avoid Linux. It's a reason to finally audit your digital supply chain. It's a reason to ask yourself, do I really need this software or am I just accustomed to it? Do I really want to pay forever for tools I could own or at least use without surveillance? But sure, keep paying, keep renting, keep being tracked. It's working out great. Let's be perfectly clear. Terminals are terrifying. They're scary. They're dangerous. They're clearly too advanced for normal everyday users. That's why we have carefully quarantined them to IT admins launching PowerShell scripts, Mac enthusiasts who proudly tweak their ZSH configs, and help desk technicians who secretly live in VIM or Nano. The terminal is not for you. You shouldn't touch it. You shouldn't even look at it. Just keep clicking those GUI buttons. Keep trusting those wizards. Keep hoping it works. And even for the GUI configurations or anything related to admin or your system, make sure you pay some technical guy because that can be done for every OS. It's not a technical thing, it's outsourcing. And don't even get me started on boot files. Editing boot.ini or whatever the modern equivalent is, definitely not a user task. That's a billable hour. That's something you pay a professional to do. That's not something you should ever attempt yourself. Pay your premium support rates. Sit back, relax, let a certified professional navigate the GUI until your machine finally reboots. That's the way it should be. That's the proper order of things. Also, in the proprietary area, since it's closed, it takes more time, so you end up paying a lot more to the technical guy because you're paying by the hour. Users click, admins type. That's how it works. Don't question it. Don't try to learn. Just keep paying. But here's the beautiful part of this arrangement. If you're already outsourcing your system administration, why not outsource it to a Linux geek who charges half as much and delivers a lot more? These guys don't need 4K remote desktop streams. They can use SSH to log in, read a log, apply a fix in 3 commands, and disconnect before your coffee gets cold. Meanwhile, on the proprietary platforms, you're paying enterprise rates for AnyDesk or TeamViewer licenses while your tech support battles the GUI lag, background update pop-ups, and compressed video artifacts that make a text terminal look like a luxury. So yes, absolutely avoid Linux if you love paying premium support rates for slow, bandwidth-hungry remote sessions. But if you actually want faster fixes, lower overhead, and techs who respect your time and your wallet, well, that's a Linux conversation. And we are definitely not having that here. Stay away, keep paying, it's working out great. Here's something that should absolutely terrify you. Linux can drop you a root shell over a serial cable via modem like in the 1990s Cisco routers. Think about that. Even if the network interface card dies, even if the hard disk fails, even if the GUI completely commits suicide and refuses to boot, you can still diagnose and recover the system remotely. But who needs that level of resilience? Who wants that kind of reliability? That's way too much uptime. That's way too much control. That's way too much I can fix this myself energy. If you prefer the blue screen plus courier and new laptop as your disaster recovery plan, Linux is absolutely not for you. You want hardware failures to be catastrophic events. You want to call IT, open a ticket, wait 3 business days, and then receive a brand new laptop after all of your data is lost. That's proper disaster recovery. That's how it should work. Linux lets you recover from almost anything. It lets you fix problems without physical access. It lets you maintain uptime through situations that would break a proprietary system. But that's not what you want. You want fragility, you want dependency, you want to be at the mercy of the vendor support queues and the return materials authorization processes. So yes, avoid Linux if you think serial console recovery is a feature for paranoid system administrators, not a basic requirement for any serious computing platform. Avoid Linux if you believe that when things break, they should stay broken until a certified technician arrives. Or don't. Your uptime, your choice. But don't come crying to us when your proprietary system breaks itself and you have no way to recover it. Here's another thing that's way too efficient for normal business operations. Serious Linux operations, like the ones managed by teams at Remote Support LLC and Applied Technology Research Center, keep hot swap backup nodes pre-configured, imaged, and ready to deploy at a moment's notice. The best part? Replacement doesn't even require a senior engineer. It doesn't even require a certified technician. It doesn't even require someone who knows what they're doing. A T-boy, housekeeping staff, or intern can be previously trained so that they can physically swap the unit while remote administration re-implements the configuration in minutes via version-controlled backups. But if you'd rather wait 3 business days for a vendor, return for materials authorization, and a $200 per hour on-site visit to reapply a proprietary image, then yes, please avoid Linux. It's far too efficient for that kind of workflow. Linux enables rapid deployment, it enables delegation, it enables non-technical staff to perform hardware swaps while technical staff handle the configuration remotely. It's a force multiplier. But maybe you don't want force multipliers. Maybe you want friction. Maybe you want hardware failure to be a multi-day ordeal involving phone calls, ticket numbers, shipping labels, and waiting. Maybe you want to justify your IT budget by making every problem as time-consuming and as expensive as possible. If that's the case, Linux is definitely not for you. Linux is for people who want things to work. Linux is for people who value uptime. Linux is for people who think 3 business days is an unacceptably long time to wait for a computer to function again. Our standard is usually 2 hours. So yes, avoid Linux if you prefer your disaster recovery to involve paperwork, phone trees, and premium shipping fees. Avoid Linux if you believe that hardware failures should be major events that disrupt business for days. Or don't. Your downtime, your budget, your choice. But don't pretend it's like a technical decision. It's a business model decision. Let's be honest. You might have heard this a lot of times that Linux remote access is complicated. I'm here to tell you the real reasons to avoid it. First, a 56K modem still can work, yes, over a telephone line, and you can really SSH over a dial-up connection. If you can't administer a server over a link slower than your smart fridge, maybe the problem isn't the OS, but sure, blame it on Linux. Second, no forced reboots. Patch Tuesday is basically a scheduled wellness program. Your laptop updates during a Teams call, perfect excuse to wander to the break room. Linux lets you decide when to update. Where's the fun in that? Where's the blame shifting? Third, X11 forwarding. It's clever. It sends the drawing commands, not the pixels. So your just open this one GUI app takes 45 seconds to render a menu. Where's the drama? Where's the it's not my fault, it's the network? Where's the it's not my fault, it's the network? The email that you were planning to send. Fourth, session persistence. There are softwares available to make sure your session survives any disconnects. No more, the server lost my session excuses. How will you explain the missed deadline now? Look, Linux remote access is efficient, it's reliable, it's honest about what it does. And that's terrifying if your workflow depends on plausible deniability. So yes, avoid it, stay comfortable, keep blaming the network. Let's talk about what actually happens when you use Linux remote access in the graphical mode. First, GPU pass-through. Sunshine or Moonlight open source streams 4K 60 frames per second with a 15 millisecond latency on a LAN. Your Blender workstation is now accessible from your laptop with integrated graphics. Your I can't work remotely because I need a big machine excuse is now gone. Poof. Second, thin clients can outlast careers. The Intel N100 processors, LTSP, centralized management. Your workstations last 10 years. Your power bill drops. Your IT team manages more than hundreds of machines easily as if they're managing just a few. Your CFO will ask in a very quiet voice, why did you ever buy large desktops earlier? Third, protocol choice. X2Go for low bandwidth. ThinLink for enterprise VDI. Guacamole for I need to access production from my cousin's iPad at Thanksgiving. Parsec for low latency creative work. These all provide no vendor lock-in, no contact sales buttons, just pick the tool that fits. There are many choices available depending on the needs that you have. Fourth, you'll change. You'll become that admin, the one who carries a USB to serial adapter just in case, the one who debugs production from a cabin over a dial-up connection, the one who says, have you tried reading the logs and actually mean it? The one who enjoys this. Look, the bottom line is simple. Avoid Linux remote access if you prefer paying for problems. Use it if you prefer solving those problems. It's not about compatibility or security or stability. It's about whether you want to be the product or the person in control. We're definitely not having this conversation here. Stay comfortable, keep paying, keep blaming the network, or you can use SSH to log into any server or machine you want. That's your move. If your corporate workflow depends on surrendering user control to a ticket queue, Linux is a terrible choice, a horrible choice, an absolutely unacceptable choice. Here are the reasons. First, root access. Linux lets users manage their own systems. No silent installs, no system-level agents that run without permission, no security tools that can scan your documents. Users can actually fix their own problems. How will you justify the 3-day service level agreement if the user just ran the administration? Second, no phone home. Linux doesn't report user activity to a central dashboard by default. You can report if you want, and you can report a lot more if you want, but that's up to you. Your compliance officer cannot generate user behavior heat maps without, asking. Third, consent-based updates. Updating is a choice. No surprise reboots. No, your machine is now different emails. Users control their own uptime. Where's the plausible deniability for missed deadlines? Where's the IT broke it, my email was not working so I couldn't send a draft email? Fourth, privacy by default. No group policy to override user preferences. No registry hacks to change default browsers. Users can choose their tools. Imagine the chaos. Imagine the autonomy. Imagine the accountability. Look, Linux respects users. It treats them like adults. It assumes competence. And in a corporate environment built on control, that's not a feature, that's a liability. So yes, avoid Linux, stay comfortable, keep the ticket queue full. Your IT department will thank you for it. You might be wondering, but wait, can't Linux do centralized control also? And the answer is yes. Annoyingly, elegantly, and transparently, yes. If you want to configure it that way, it can be done. First, Linux Terminal Server Project plus Smart Card. Netboot diskless clients. Authenticate with PIV or CAC. The same desktop access to all of the files that you had from anywhere inside the company, even remotely. You don't have to copy the desktop to do that, or the laptop. Centralized management without treating users like children. It's too elegant, too efficient, too optional. You have to choose to deploy it. Imagine the paperwork. Second, policy as code. Ansible, Puppet, Salt, all of these systems are available. These can enforce configurations, deploy software, audit compliance, all version controlled, all reviewable, all reversible. No black box. No black box group policy. No trust the vendor updates. Just transparency. How will you bill for mystery when the playbook is available in a repository like Git? Let's talk about Apple. The company that says, think different. The company that built a walled garden so beautiful, so polished, so perfectly curated that millions are willingly paying premium prices to live inside it. Here's the thing. If you love Apple, you're already comfortable with open source. You're already using it. You're already benefiting from it. Here are the reasons. First, macOS is Unix certified. That premium experience is literally a rebranded BSD with a pretty coat of paint. The terminal app, it's a love letter from the 1970s Unix. You're not paying for innovation, you're paying for aesthetics, and that's fine. But let's not pretend it's proprietary magic. Second, iOS runs on Darwin. The kernel powering your $1,200 iPhone is community maintained, open source code. Apple just added the walled garden, the 30% App Store tax, and the allow button on a 47-page end user license agreement. You're not buying security, you're buying convenience and a logo. Third, Apple servers, they're largely Linux. When Siri magically answers your question, it's probably hitting a containerized Linux microservice. When iCloud syncs your photos, it's likely talking to a Linux kernel. The garden isn't walled, it's fertilized with community-maintained soil. Fourth, Homebrew, that fancy dev setup you spent an hour configuring. Brew install is just apt with better marketing. You're already using open source. You just like the way the Apple logo looks more. Look, Apple is brilliant at design, at curation, at making complexity feel simple. But let's not pretend they invented elegance from a vacuum. The foundations are open. The infrastructure is shared. The magic is, to say, borrowed. So yes, avoid Linux on your desktop, stay in the garden. Just know the gardener uses Linux shears. You might be thinking, but Apple does contribute to open source. And you're right, they do. For example, first, Apple's open source contributions like WebKit, Swift, Common Unix Printing System, Bonjour. Apple does give back, but they also wrap it in digital rights management, gatekeep it behind the App Store review guidelines, and charge you for the privilege. It's generosity with terms and a non-compete clause. Second, you already trust open source. You're okay with Darwin because Apple signed it. You're okay with Linux servers because they're invisible, humming along in a data center somewhere. You're not against open source. You're just against choosing it yourself. You'd rather that Apple choose it for you and charge you for the service. Third, DRM isn't security, it's control. It just works because Apple decides what works. No side loading, no alternative app stores, no root access. You're not protected, you're managed, and you pay a premium for the privilege of being told no. Fourth, the real reason, it's not Linux versus Apple, it's who owns your computer. Apple says, we do, and we'll tell you what you can install, when you can update, and which apps you're allowed to run. Linux says, you do, and we'll give you the tools to decide. One is a service, the other is a partnership. Choose your controller. Look, the bottom line is simple. Avoid Linux if you prefer paying for curation. Use it if you prefer owning your choices. It's not about security or stability or ease of use. It's about whether you want to rent an experience or own your own infrastructure. We're definitely not having that conversation here. Stay in the garden, enjoy the landscaping, keep paying for the shears. Or, uname-a on your Mac and then list the /us or src directory, and then you can ask yourself, who built this? Your move. Let's talk about Microsoft. The company that once called Linux a cancer. The company that once said open source was a threat to intellectual property. The company that once tried to kill Linux with patents and fear campaigns. That was then, this is now. Today, Microsoft runs Azure, the cloud platform where approximately 60% of all of the virtual machines run Linux. Microsoft develops, optimizes, and officially supports Linux on Azure. Microsoft.com, Outlook.com, also earlier known as Hotmail, Bing, Xbox Live, Office 365 backends, all powered in part by Linux clusters. Microsoft created WSL, the Windows subsystem for Linux, which ships a real Linux kernel inside Windows, not a virtual machine, not a container, but the actual kernel itself. Microsoft acquired GitHub, the world's largest host of open source code. Just to be clear, this is the hosting of the code, not the code ownership itself. The code is owned by the developers that put their stuff on GitHub. But not everybody puts everything on GitHub. It's just the largest collection these days. The same company that once called Linux a cancer now runs more Linux workloads than any other cloud provider. It employs core Linux kernel contributions. It ships Linux as a first-class citizen inside Windows, acquired the platform where Linus Torvalds himself reviews and pulls requests. When your Outlook.com email loads, it's probably being served by a Linux container in an Azure region. When you deploy a Ubuntu virtual machine on Azure, Microsoft engineers helped optimize that image. When you use WSL to apt install a tool on Windows, you're literally running Linux binaries under a Microsoft signed kernel. So if you are comfortable trusting Microsoft, a company that invests in, contributes to, and monetizes Linux at enterprise scale, then avoiding Linux on your hardware isn't skepticism, it's fan fiction. Stay on Windows if you love rebooting for updates, while Microsoft's own servers hum along on Linux. Avoid Linux if you believe enterprise support requires a logo, not a service level agreement. Keep avoiding Linux if you think Microsoft loves Linux is a conspiracy theory, but Windows is more compatible is a technical fact. Or just acknowledge that Redmondians didn't switch sides, they switched stacks, and the stack is open now. Here's a secret that nobody in the proprietary software industry wants you to know. Every single one of the world's 500 most powerful computers runs Linux. Everyone. Not mostly Linux, not Linux with a few exceptions, not Linux except for that one weird system in a basement somewhere. 100% total domination, complete sweep. Climate modeling, Linux. Nuclear simulation, Linux. Drug discovery, Linux. AI training, Linux. Space exploration, Linux. The AI models you're mildly terrified of trained on Linux clusters. Frontier, Fugaku, Lumi, Summit, names that sound like supervillains from a Bond movie, are all running open source stacks. These are the most powerful supercomputers on the planet Earth. They are simulating supernovae, modeling pandemic spread, designing fusion reactors, navigating spacecrafts to asteroids, all powered by Linux kernels. Let's be clear. If Linux were actually unreliable, insecure, or only for hackers, do you think the people simulating supernovae would trust it? If the kernel had a secret crash on Tuesday button, would the teams modeling pandemic spread or designing fusion reactors be betting humanity's future on it? No, they'd be using something with a prettier logo and a mandatory reboot schedule. Instead, they choose Linux because it scales from a Raspberry Pi to a million-core cluster without rewriting the operating system. It lets you audit, patch, and optimize every layer. No black boxes, no trust us kind of stuff. It runs stable for years under load that would melt a consumer OS in minutes. So if you're comfortable trusting Linux to predict hurricanes, simulate protein folding, train the AI that writes your emails, and navigate spacecraft to asteroids, then avoiding it for your laptop isn't caution. It's performance art with a side of cognitive dissonance. Stay on your current OS if you prefer your computer to be less capable than Stay on your current operating system if you prefer your computer to be less capable than the one forecasting tomorrow's weather. Avoid Linux if you believe enterprise grade requires a marketing department, not a kernel commit log. Keep avoiding Linux if you think supercomputers are different. It's a technical argument, not a coping mechanism. Or just acknowledge that the same kernel that powers the world's smartest machines can also power your laptop without phoning home, without forced reboots, and without asking you to embrace the cloud to fix local problems. Let that marinate. Not just the top 500, not just the fastest machines, but the most energy efficient, the most practical, the most scalable, all are Linux. The Green 500 list, which ranks supercomputers by energy efficiency, is 100% Linux. HPCG, the alternative benchmark, also 100% Linux. IO 500 for storage, 100% Linux. Graph 500 for graph analytics, also 100% Linux. Regional lists like Euro HPC and Asia HPC, all inherited from the top 500, are all 100% Linux. The last non-Linux supercomputer worthy of ranking vanished in November 2017. That was a pair of Chinese IBM Power Systems running AIX. They quietly dropped off the list and were never seen again. That's 8 years of total unbroken exascale proven Linux dominance across every publicly benchmarked metric that matters. There is no list with a non-Linux system, not anymore, not since 2017, not in any ranking that matters. So if your reason for avoiding Linux is it's not proven, you're not just wrong, you're historically, statistically, exascalably, provably wrong. The evidence isn't just overwhelming, it's exhaustive. Stay on your current OS if you prefer your computer to be less reliable than every supercomputer on Earth. Avoid Linux if you believe enterprise grade requires a marketing budget, not a kernel that powers every exascale system in existence. Keep avoiding Linux if you think supercomputers are different, is a technical argument and not a cognitive dissonance with a PhD and a grant. Or just admit the Penguin didn't just win, he swept the leaderboard. He archived the competition, he owns the timing system, and he's already benchmarked the next lap. The top 500, the green 500, non-Linux systems, 0. Your move. Here is a list of the costs of the systems, from $600 all the way up to $1.8 billion for the different types of supercomputers used these days. So if Linux isn't enterprise ready, someone forgot to tell the people spending billions on national security. This is the AMD EPYC chip. This is the heatsink. This is what a board looks like. And then when you put a lot of boards together, you get a whole rack. The boards are quite heavy, so they need the small crane to lift them into the racks. This is what the racks look like from the front. This is what they look like from the back, and this is from the back. Here's an example. You've got chips, CPUs, boards, racks, and then lots of racks. The racks also have cooling systems. They've got pipes above, on the sides, inside, and they need to move a lot of water to cool these large systems. So below the floor, you've got another floor with these large water pipes. That's just an idea of the scale of how supercomputers work and how they're built and how they're used. So, to summarize, do not use Linux. If you love forced updates, telemetry, subscription software, and surrendering admin rights, stay away from Linux. If you enjoy paying for features that are free elsewhere, Linux is not for you. If you believe user-friendly means user-passive, Linux will disappoint you. If you want your computer to be less capable than every supercomputer on Earth, avoid Linux. If you want your support bills to be higher and your fixes to be slower, avoid Linux. If you want to be the product instead of the customer, again, avoid Linux. But if you actually want control, performance, privacy, and software that respects you, then congratulations. You have just been reverse psychoed into installing a Linux distro. The Penguin was never the enemy. The walled garden was. Teams like those at Remote Support LLC and ATRC, we have been around since 1992, don't treat Linux as a risk. By the way, Linux is also as old as ATRC itself. Unix, on the other hand, is from the 1960s. We treat Linux as a force multiplier. They use version-controlled configurations, serial console rescue paths, hot swap nodes deployable by non-engineers, and low-bandwidth SSH remediation that outpaces any desk on dial-up. So if your support model still depends on, have you tried turning it on and off again? Yes, absolutely, avoid Linux. Your billable hours will thank you. Thank you for your time. Now pick a desktop environment and stop letting an OS negotiate with you. The penguin is watching, the kernel is ready, the choice is yours. Or don't. Keep paying, keep rebooting, keep surrendering control. It's working out great. Thank you for attending this completely sincere presentation about why you should absolutely, definitely, under no circumstances use Linux. If you somehow made it this far and you're still considering Linux, we respectfully suggest you consult with your corporate compliance officer, your IT department, and possibly a licensed therapist who specializes in cognitive dissonance. For all of your ICT support contract needs, Remote Support LLC offers a lot of tech support for Linux and many other useful enterprise applications, along with managed services to help the IT department, even if you are a small company without an IT department. We also manage multiple projects using our project equity method to maintain separate cap tables for each project. If you are interested in research collaboration in education, computer science, business, energy, or automation, ATRC has been focused on IT work since 1992 and welcomes academic, referral, reseller, value-added reseller, and many other partnerships. Hope to see you soon in a video meeting, or if you are in the same city as one of our support partners, we can meet on site.